Privileged to introduce to you our keynote speaker of the evening, Father Greg Boyle, otherwise known as G-Dog. Father Greg is a great leader and communicator in our community. He was a former pastor of Dolores Mission, and somehow, some way, God put on his heart to start a work called Homeboy Industries. And for me, I've watched Homeboy Industries grow. I remember seeing the little businesses and the things that they were doing. And now whenever I travel in the airport, the longest line that I joined gladfully is at Homeboy Industries Bakery, right? Is it Homegirls? I'm not sure which one it is, but it's a wonderful place to go to and to be a part of. Father Boyle has also written a book called Tattoos on the Heart. As I'm reading through this book is blessing my heart. I've already kind of used the statements in there, how when we speak words of life into individuals, they in turn want to tattoo those on their heart. If you want to get this book, please do like I did. Go on down to the Homeboy Industries and take a tour and buy a book and support the ministry. It's a great ministry. Father Boyle doesn't like a whole lot of long introductions. He is a well sought after speaker. He does over 200 speeches around the nation. When they asked me to speak his fee, I was like, I went into shock. But thankfully, he's blessed us and encouraged us to be here. So would you please put your hands together and receive Father Greg Boyle.
You're eating into my time. It's a real privilege to be here. I didn't know I charged for speaking. I'm going to have to talk to people there. What Martin Luther King said about church could well be said about your time here at Venice YouthBuild. It's not the place you've come to, it's the place you go from. And you go from here to do something very specific. I think that Venice YouthBuild has given you this vision. It's not just about accomplishment, and certainly we're going to honor that. But it's a vision about wanting the world to look differently than it currently looks. I mean, you came here and you didn't know each other, I'm going to presume. And maybe didn't even like each other. But what happens is you end up creating and building a community of kinship such that God, in fact, might recognize it. So Mother Teresa thinks the thought that the problem in the world was that we'd just forgotten that we belonged to each other. So how do we build that sense of kinship and connection? The prophet Habakkuk writes, the vision still has its time, presses on to fulfillment, and it will not disappoint. And if it delays, wait for it. But we're not supposed to wait con los brazos cruzados, tapping our feet and staring at our watches. You want to make this thing happen. Venice YouthBuild is not the place you've come to. It's always been the place you go from. And you go now with a sense of dignity that is renewed, a sense of sure purpose, and an unshakable belief that you are exactly what God had in mind when God made you. Yeah. And so at Venice YouthBuild, you became that truth. You inhabited that truth, and nothing can stop you. So for 30 years, I've worked with gang members, and yeah, I had more hair, and it was dark at one time. But the homies have taught me everything of value. Oh my gosh. And but in the last couple of years, they've taught me how to text, so I'm so grateful to them, because I find it sure beats the heck out of actually talking to people. And so the homies I've sort of learned how to do this, LOL and OMG and BTW, and the homies have taught me a new one, OHN, which apparently stands for, oh hell no. And I've been using that one quite a bit lately. So there I am in a car with two homies, Manuel and Ponch, who were older vatos, been to prison, and we're driving, and they're going to help me give a talk. And so Manuel's in the front seat, he's shotgun, and so all of a sudden he gets an incoming text, and he chuckles to himself. And I said, what is it? And he goes, oh, it's dumb. It's from Snoopy back at the office. Well, I'd just seen Snoopy. Snoopy gave me a big abrazo as the day was beginning. Snoopy and Manuel work together in the clock-in room where they clock in 300 gang members, all rivals, enemies, who work in all our 8 businesses. It's a tough job. And I said, what's he saying? He goes, oh, it's dumb. Hang on. Hey, dog, it's me, Snoops. Yeah, they got my ass locked up at county jail. They're charging me with being the ugliest vato in America. You have to come down right now, show them they got the wrong guy. But we died laughing, the three of us, and then I realized that Manuel and Snoopy are enemies. They are from rival gangs. They used to shoot bullets at each other. Now they shoot text messages. And there's a word for that, and the word is kinship. It's about how do we enter into the sense of mutuality. You have certificates, you know how to do things. But better than that is what you have now entered into is a sense of kinship and mutuality with each other. One of the great privileges of my life was knowing Cesar Chavez as a friend. And I can remember once a reporter had commented to him, said, wow, these farm workers, they sure love you. And Cesar shrugged and smiled and said, the feeling's mutual. And that's the whole point of kinship, is to arrive at this place where there is no us and them, where there is no daylight that separates us. And that's what you hope for. At Homeboy Industry, we've got all these businesses and lots of folks, and thousands of gang members have walked through our doors in the last 26 years. And one of our businesses, Homegirl Cafe, where women with records, young ladies from rival gangs, waitresses with attitude, will gladly take your order. And so we get celebs there every once in a while. We had Jim Carrey, the movie star, the other day, and we had the entire Dodger team came for lunch one day. And Diane Keaton came once, and she's a movie star, Annie Hall, won an Academy Award, Godfather movies, big movie star. So she comes in with some guy that comes there regularly. And her waitress this day is Glenda. And Glenda's a homegirl, been there, done that, big girl, tattooed, been to prison, parolee, felon. She doesn't know who Diane Keaton is, so she's taking her order. And Diane Keaton says, well, what do you recommend? And Glenda rattles off the 3 platillos that she really likes. And Diane Keaton says, I'll have that second one. That one sounds good. And for some reason, at that moment, something dawns on Glenda. She looks at Diane Keaton, she says, wait a minute. I feel like I know you. You know, like maybe we've met. And Diane Keaton decides to sort of deflect it humbly. Oh, God, I don't know, I suppose I have one of those faces, you know, that people think they've seen before, you know. And then it goes, no, now I know. We were locked up together. That pretty much took my breath away. I don't believe we've had any further Diane Keaton sightings. But suddenly kinship so quickly, Oscar-winning actress, attitudinal waitress, exactly what God had in mind. And this is what I think in part you should be celebrating today. As Jesus tells us, his dream come true is very simple. That you may be one. It's about kinship. It's about connection. It's about standing against forgetting that we belong to each other and obliterating once and for all the illusion that we're separate. Venice YouthBuild is not the place you've come to, it's the place you go from. It's just one last story, because I know we have a lot of celebrating to do. People always ask me about rivals, enemies working together, and it's hard at first. You know, homies will come in and say, I'm ready, 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 and I'll say, okay, I have an opening in the bakery, but you have to work with X, Y, and Z, and I rattle off the names of rivals, of enemies, and homies always do the same thing. You know, they think for a long-ass time, you know, and then they say, okay, I'll work with him, but I'm not going to talk to him. And that used to bother me in the old days, until, you know, you discover that it's impossible for human beings to demonize people they know, which I'm sure is something you've discovered. And so I had this guy, a little chaparrito, young guy, 19 years old, little tiny guy named, everybody called him Youngster. So I thought he was ready, and so I bring him to Homeboy Silkscreen, which is our biggest business, been around for 20 years. And thousands of gang members have worked there over the years. And we print shirts and do embroidery. And so I bring him in, and I'm going to introduce him to his 30 co-workers. So I watch him as he shakes hands with each guy. And he looks them straight in the eye and firm handshake. And some of them are enemies and lots of them are rivals. And he shakes hands with each one. Until he gets to the last guy, a guy named Puppet, who, when Puppet and Youngster are in each other's vicinity, they start to mumble something. They stare at their shoes. They don't shake hands. Well, I know they're enemies because I know what gangs they're from, but he just finished shaking hands with other enemies. I discover later that this is a hatred that's very personal and very deep, beyond which neither of them think they can really get past. So I sensed that much at the moment, and I said, look, if you guys can't hang working together, let me know. I got a gang of people who want this job. Calladitos, they don't say a word. Well, 6 months later, a Puppet leaves his house to go to a corner store some distance from his home, one of those little corner stores. And he buys something, and on his way home, for some reason, he decides to take a shortcut. So he dodges into an alley, and because he's taken a detour, suddenly, unexpectedly, he's surrounded by 10 members of a rival gang, 10 against 1. And they beat him badly. And he falls to the ground, and while he's lying on the ground, they will not stop kicking his head until he's lifeless. So somebody finds his body and takes him to White Memorial Hospital, where he's declared effectively brain dead. But it's the policy there to keep you connected to machines for 48 hours, so you can have 2 straight days of what they call a flat read with no brain activity. Then the doctors can sign the death certificate, making it official. This allowed family and friends to gather. I was giving a talk at St. Louis University. I flew home immediately. I've seen a lot of horrible things in my life, but I've never in my life seen anything as horrifying as this, as the sight of this young man with his head swollen many times its size. You could barely train your eyes on him. And so at the end of the 48 hours, as a priest, I blessed him. And I anointed his forehead with oil, and we disconnected. And a week later, I buried him. But in the first 24 hours, I was alone in my office at night, about 8:30 at night. And while Puppet was lying beaten in the hospital, the phone rings. And it's Youngster, Puppet's co-worker from the silkscreen. And he says, hey, that's messed up about what happened to Puppet. And I said, yeah, it is. And then with a certain kind of eagerness even, he says, is there anything I can do? Can I give him my blood? And we both fall silent under the weight of it, until finally he breaks the silence, choking back his tears, and he says with great deliberation, he was not my enemy, he was my friend. We worked together. Now, can I say that always happens at Homeboy Industries? Well, of course it does. Any exceptions? I can't think of a single time. And it shouldn't surprise us that God's own dream come true for us, that we be one. Just happens to be our own deepest longing for ourselves. Because it turns out it's mutual. You've accomplished a lot, but you've discovered that we belong to each other. And you've decided to stand against forgetting that. Along with knowing that you are exactly what God had in mind when God made you. And now you've become that truth and inhabited that truth. You've committed to build more than houses. You've committed to build a community of kinship such that God, in fact, might recognize it. For Venice YouthBuild is not the place you've come to. It's always been the place you were going to go from. For the vision still has its time, presses on to fulfillment, and it will not disappoint. And if it delays, wait for it. Congratulations, and thank you.
Wow. Wait for it. It is our tradition in Venice YouthBuild to honor those who came before us in terms of the YouthBuild cycle. And so we allow alumni to come forth and take a few minutes to share what's been going on with their life after they've walked away from YouthBuild. We are one big family, and one of our family members has returned to speak to us. So in the next few minutes, I would like for you to help me to receive Miss Teresa Lucas, who's going to come and share a little bit of her life. As she comes, Teresa is continuing to go to school. She's one of the few sisters I know in the auto mechanic industry, and she's a well-respected YouthBuild alumna. Receive it.
Thank you, Omar, for the introduction. First off, I want to congratulate you guys for being here today and making it this far. So, congrats. So, it's been exactly 2 years to this day that I too was sitting where you all are now. Graduation day, in my pink dress and my fresh cap and gown. I remember feeling so incredibly happy, scared, courageous, and insecure all at the same time. I kept thinking, thank you, God. Thank you for letting me come this far and reaching my goals and helping me see what was important. I felt scared because I didn't know what was next, what I would be doing after YouthBuild. The courageous feeling came from knowing that I could do whatever I set my mind to, and the insecurity came from thinking this is it. I will no longer have the support system that got me back on track and kept me there. I kept feeling this overwhelming sensation of thinking I'm going downhill from here because it wasn't YouthBuild anymore. It was me and the real world that YouthBuild had prepared me for.